So today we're going to be hearing from 6 amazing speakers on the landscape of data science across industries, which means that it's going to be both about general tech, but also industries beyond general tech that traditionally you wouldn't be considered as like data science being the most major role. So to give you a quick idea, we're going to be having about 30 minutes of structured questions where I will be asking questions. And in the meantime, you can think about what you want to ask, and in the end of the 30 minutes, in the last 15, you can ask your questions. And I will now pass the microphone on to our speakers to introduce themselves. I hope you enjoy it. So actually, would you like to start?
I thought I'd be starting last. Okay, I'll go first. Hi everyone, my name is Sonakshi Pandey. I currently work at Google as a data analytics specialist. Giving you folks a little bit more about my background. So I'm originally from Mumbai in India. That's where I was born, I was brought up. I did my bachelor's in computer science from a university, like from Mumbai University. And then I moved to the United States to pursue master's in computer science. So I got my master's degree from UT Dallas, and right after I got my master's, I started working at Amazon. It was my dream company back then, and I got my dream role, which was a software engineering role. Back at Amazon, what I did was very interesting. So have you all gone to Amazon.com, search for items and seen out of stock error or like not available error? So I was working for the forecasting data platform team, where my team was responsible for ensuring that you folks don't see that error. So this is a very simple version of what I did, but actually there's a lot of machine learning that Amazon did, and all these machine learning models ran on the data platform that was built and managed by my team. So I was a software engineer for a whole 3 years, and then I felt, it's time for a change. So I moved into a solution architect role at AWS. So as a solution architect role, my work was to talk to a lot of customers. I do have one of the customers I worked with previously sitting here. I worked with a lot of customers, helped them build data applications on AWS. And after spending 5 whole years at Amazon, I moved to Google. At Google, I do something similar. I help customers build and migrate data applications to Google Cloud. I also took up a role of team lead, where I was leading my team recently, and I was also a product manager for one of the products called BigQuery Data Frames. So yeah, I mean, that's been my journey so far, and with that, I would love to pass it on to Monica.
Hi everyone, my name is Monica Gerber, and I work at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. I'm the translational analytics manager there in the data science lab, and that means I lead a team of data scientists who are working on healthcare data analysis and data access. And before I was doing that, my background is in biostatistics and epidemiology. I have a master's in public health, and I've worked in a variety of roles in academic medical centers supporting research analysis.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Hottie, and I am a principal data scientist at Nordstrom. And I think there's a lot of current, former, and hopefully future Nordies in the crowd today. So excited to have you all here. A little bit about me. I come from a math background, so I studied mathematics at the University of Washington, and I completed a graduate degree in applied and computational mathematics from Johns Hopkins. When I first started my career, I wanted to be an actuary. I thought, grad school, that's not for me. I'm going to take exams and get paid when I pass them. That sounded like a pretty good gig. Lo and behold, those exams were a little bit more difficult than I expected, and while I'm all about perseverance and trying again, it took me 4 times to pass the probability exam, which is kind of embarrassing to say out loud, but I got it. But ultimately, once I went through, the exams became more about pricing stock options, which was like great, but not so much what I was interested in. Then at that point in time, data science became more of a thing. I transitioned to working at Nordstrom in marketing analytics, so I started there in 2017. Worked in a variety of roles there, and ultimately became a data science manager at Nordstrom. And then I left for about 2 years to work at a health tech startup as a director of data science, and then came back to Nordstrom last year, working in the digital AI space. So I work on our outfitting computer vision model, also using multimodal, say that 10 times fast, multimodal models to predict product attributes. And ultimately about me, I like to have fun at work and like to learn new things. So that's
All right. Hey everyone, Shaylee Guru here. I work as a principal product manager over at T-Mobile. Joined T-Mobile on Boomerang back. I used to work there from 2015 to 2018. Came back after working at the Walt Disney World, or the company, and Nike, where I led their product and innovation organization. Where I worked with a lot of different, 4 different teams, engineering teams, data engineers, machine learning engineers, and building out the machine learning models to then send it out to our products that you might see or might not see. But I might not be able to talk about them today either. But I actually had bachelor's in biology, so I broke into tech about 10 years ago. So I come from a very non-tech background and have now made it into technology. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm a senior data scientist at Spotify on the ads team. In terms of background, my undergrad was in computer science, and so my first job was a software engineer in an investment bank in Singapore, which is where I went to college. And I absolutely hated that job. I also realized that finance was not the industry for me. So that's when I decided to come to the US for a master's program in data science. And then my first job after that program was at Amazon, where I mostly worked in supply chain optimization. Then I went to Instacart, which is a grocery platform company for those who might not have heard of it. And now I'm at Spotify, where I work in the ad space.
Hey everyone, my name is Shruti Kamath. I'm the Senior Director for Firefox at Mozilla. I lead the AI and ML teams there. I've been in the applied ML space for a while now, leading teams both on the applied machine learning modeling side as well as the ML engineering side. A lot of the teams that I've led previously have been in different organizations, which are, again, consumer-facing or user-facing applications across different industries, such as financial, e-commerce, and real estate. And prior to leadership roles, I started out as a machine learning engineer. I started out in the space of relevance ranking and search, and since this space is something that really encompasses like the breadth of ML techniques and methodologies, I think that's been very interesting in learning about the space, and then leading teams as well, which are pretty diverse in types of the functions and problems that they deal with. My educational background, I started in computer science and then went on to specialize in machine learning as part of my graduate studies.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves, and let's start with our questions. This question is for Apurva, Rebecca, and Shruti. Getting up to speed to a new company is hard enough, let alone a new industry. Some of you had the experience of transitioning from one field to another. How do you approach learning about a new industry and make this transition?
Yeah, I can start. So I've been at Spotify just over a year now, and I came from Instacart, which I mentioned before is a grocery platform company. So it might seem like those are very different industries. One is grocery, the other is music and podcasts. But I was in the ads team at Instacart as well. And I think one thing I realized was that there are a lot of similarities in the ads product area, even in what might seem like different industries. So I think that's the first thing I try to do when I go to a new company or industry is I try to find similarities from my past work experience. But having said that, obviously there are unique aspects to every company and every industry. So in order to learn about these unique aspects, there are a few different things I do. The first thing that I do, and this is even before I've joined the company, usually during the interview phase, is I look at recent earnings, quarterly earnings reports of companies, which all public companies have, And this gives me a good idea of what the key metrics, the mission statement, and what the key goals of the company are. So that sort of gives me a high-level view of what the company is about, what its key focuses are. Another thing I do to get more information about the more technical aspects is to look at companies' blogs. A lot of companies, especially tech companies, have engineering as well as data science blogs, which give you a good idea of the types of projects. Data scientists, for example, are working on these types of companies. I find that very informational as well. And then once I've actually joined the company, then I usually have sort of like a 30, 60, 90-day plan for myself, where I have these different milestones that I try to hit at the 30, 60, 90-day mark to basically get as much information and domain knowledge about the company and industry as possible. I think one good way is to talk to as many people as possible, and often companies will give you time, especially as you're ramping up, to sort of talk to people in different teams, learn about what they've been working on, what their key areas of focus are, and yeah, go from there.
Thank you. That is actually very helpful, and especially for when you have the job descriptions, it's quite mysterious. Having that like blog information would be very helpful. Rebecca, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about looking at the earnings statements and then also finding people that you can talk to. That's great. I transitioned from the healthcare industry to the retail industry, and so when I made that transition, a couple of things were helpful. One, retail, especially working at Nordstrom, is something that I could relate to and put myself in the mind of the customer. Before, when I was working at healthcare, I did a lot of risk modeling of, is this patient population having an excess in cost? Was that surgery really appropriate? And that's not something that I'm really qualified to make a determination on. But at customer shopping, that was very relatable to me. So ultimately, what I try to do when starting at a new company in a new industry is get to know their business KPIs, like you were talking about, whether some of their key like Tableau dashboards or other sorts of reporting that are really key and being looked at by leadership. I also try to find a book, old school, but like reading a book about a new space, so like retail, what's going on there. Also in this sort of new world, you can learn almost anything using tools like ChatGPT. So, ask ChatGPT to write me a curriculum about transitioning to retail for a data scientist. So those are a little bit about the areas about transitioning to a new field, and I think my 2 pieces of advice would be, one, don't be afraid to ask questions. It's kind of nice being new because, there's a lot of questions that you can ask with a fresh perspective that help get out of that, we've always done it this way sort of mindset that you can observe. And then also, again, just underscoring the importance of people. There can be like, this is the data science team and this is product, but I find I have more success when I get to know the actual people in those teams, what motivates them, how do they like to work, so that can help with the transition as well.
Thank you. No one else want to answer the question?
Yeah, I can also add more. I think Rebecca and Apurva have covered quite a good set of points. Something that I'll add, I think that was already alluded to, but networking, I think, is across different functions, is what I've personally found really helpful as well. So in my role as well, whether it's product, whether it's data platforms, or just in general platform teams, legal, marketing, compliance. So working with these different functions and getting their perspective has been really helpful for me in onboarding, because sometimes I guess it's really, you don't hesitate to ask questions, but sometimes you don't know what to ask as well. So I think that getting that perspective helps. Another thing that I've also found pretty useful is, and I think most companies have this, is having an onboarding buddy who may have like knowledge, maybe within some context related to your role as well. And it's somebody who you can rely on for any go-to questions, and so they can also help you point you to the right direction as well. So if your company doesn't have that, I would suggest maybe having someone, and maybe asking your manager to get someone who you could have as someone who can help you navigate through your first 90 days especially. I
should stop just turning this off. Thank you so much. So Several of you work for companies that were thriving before data science became a career. Do you observe any tensions like where your industry is still struggling to adapt to your data science projects that previously relied on subject matter experts? And how does your company foster collaboration between data professionals and other industry experts?
I can get it started. So when I used to work at Nike, I mean, we all can know that Nike has been around for almost 50 years now. I think exactly 50 years and plus some. So, you know, coming from that area, we always had material innovators, as in apparel material innovators who would build out the apparel as well as for the footwear. So bringing in the data scientists, they were definitely hesitant. But what I did as a product manager was then talk to the material innovators, figure out what their problems were, what did their process look like. And turned out that they actually had a bottleneck where they had so much of tribal knowledge. So when they were building materials, they are either working with PDFs or Excel sheets, you know, and various other forms of data. And so when they had to build a brand new material, how do you transform, right, all of that data into maybe a database or a machine learning platform? Well, they couldn't necessarily do that. And when someone actually left the company, and they took all that tribal knowledge with them. So now, what I did working with the material innovators and my data scientist team was to get all of that information into a database, and then also working with our data scientists, build out a platform where we were able to, you know, basically allow them to digitally test their material within 2 minutes, instead of them having to wait 2 months to even just get like a little swatch of physical material for them to be able to test. So yes, there might be hesitancy, but at the same time, if you show them that it could work for them and it can make their jobs a little bit more easier, it just, you know, we are able to get their buy-in a lot more quicker.
Thank you. Do you want to add to that, Monica?
Yeah, so healthcare has been a data-driven field since the beginning, and Fred Hutchinson for example, has been following bone marrow transplant patients for over 50 years. So there's all of this history in the organization. And so when we see tensions or hesitations to collaborate, I think we have to remind ourselves to talk to the humans and understand why their decisions, which may not make sense to us, make a lot of sense to them from their perspective and from the technology that they're working with. So we have people who are, might be working with kind of archaeological layers of technology and trying to adapt to changes in data science, and that context is really difficult. So we need to understand how they're functioning and how what they're doing makes sense from their very specialized knowledge. And so when we, in the data science lab, try to bring in new technology or help people collaborate more, we approach it from as a human issue at the core first, and always pair social infrastructure with technological infrastructure. So one of the programs that we have to do that is called OpenScapes, which is a program that promotes open science and collaboration and data-driven research teams. So these are programs that are specially designed to bring in that social infrastructure piece along with any technological change that we're asking groups to adapt to.
As a follow-up question to that, if you're pushing towards a new technology and the team is not, you know, adapting it, what is your strategy to, you know, basically continue to use that technology?
Yeah, our goal is always to build a pit of success for teams. So we want to make the best data science decision the easiest decision. We don't want to I think it's hard when we, especially in an academic context, have mandates for the way that people must work, but instead we want to make the best decision from a data perspective, the easiest decision for that group.
Thank you. Does anyone want to add to that?
Oh, yeah, it's hard to build on really great answers, so I just wanted to underscore like really that people aspect of it and the importance of empathy. One of the techniques that I try to use is imagine that we're all working on the same team. So I mentioned it in my previous answer, but it's not like the data science team, engineering, product. It's like we're all have different roles to play in this shared outcome or shared success. So really empathy, putting yourself in that other person's shoes. It might be hard to have someone come into your job and tell you the 10 things about your job that you're, are so slow or so inefficient. That's not a great feeling to have. So being empathetic is really important. I think it's also understanding, maybe there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of vision, but what's his phased approach to get there? Maybe you really don't want to build on that spreadsheet of the exact data that they want, but maybe that's a, way to build trust and get them to feel comfortable with this more sophisticated approach. I think more specifically, one area where I've had some challenges is some of the business folks I work with are really comfortable with rules and less comfortable with uncertainty. And so just kind of bringing them along that change management of, those rules are great, but they have these weaknesses that we think that this model can help to solve, and really framing it as, your goal is this, and the risk of this approach is this, so kind of like a goals and risk framework also.
Thank you. Some of you work for quintessential tech companies where the data science of the applications are basically endless. And within this large-scale companies, how do you navigate the many teams and projects going on across big tech companies and find opportunities to create yourself space to focus on what you are interested in? So, yeah, I don't know what else to that.
Okay, so I think the way to start there is what happens a lot of times is when we speak to recruiters and when we accept job offers, the work that we are actually doing does not match what we signed up for. This is more common than you might think. So I feel that this question is very useful and relevant to a lot of people. So here is what I think I have done and what has helped me in the past. So if I sign up for projects or if I sign up for some work that I do not like, what I start doing is first find out what is it that the company, what are the different things in the company out there, and do I want to do that? And the way to find out different opportunities inside your current company or some other companies by starting to network with a lot of people, talk to them, go on coffee conversations. I remember back at Amazon and even at Google, with big companies, there are always affinity groups. It could be women-related affinity groups, or it could be women in data science. It could be, people in data science, people in supply chain. So I used to randomly attend events during work days. I used to carve out time for attending events, network with random people, and that's how I actually found out, about the solution architect role. I networked a lot. I met a solution architect who became my friend and kind of mentored me to move from one role to another. So I think networking plays a very important role when it comes to finding out what opportunities are out there. Secondly, once you find out an opportunity, I think the second aspect is be open to taking risks. Because what happens is when I talk to people about my career journey, people tell me, you were a software engineer and then you suddenly went and transitioned into tech sales. I mean, how did you do that? And why did you do that? I did that because I felt that it is something that will help me grow personally. It aligned with what goals I had for myself in the future. And sorry, I kind of just blanked out. And I think one other thing is I was ready to take a risk. What I did is when I told my manager that I want to make this move, he told me, you are completely crazy. I do not recommend doing that. I was like, I want to do that anyways because I told myself this is a risk I'm taking, and I'm willing to accept that, if this doesn't go wrong, I will change my path and I will come back. So network, be open, find out what opportunities are there, and don't be afraid to take risks. Whenever you change teams, change roles, you can always not burn bridges. Be in very good books with your previous team, and if things go south, you can always change back, come back to your original team, and this way it takes off the pressure of moving around and making changes within your career and within that organization.
Thank you. Apurva, do you have anything?
Sure. So I think Sonakshi covered the big company perspective, so I can talk about my experience from a small company perspective. So when I joined Instacart, it was only about 1,000 people, which is much smaller than Amazon and Spotify, with only around 50 data scientists in the entire company. I think one advantage there was, one, because it was small, you sort of knew all the data scientists and sort of had an idea of what they were working on. But I also realized there was a lot of opportunity to sort of start new initiatives or even resource groups, which Sonakshi talked about. So one thing, for example, I worked on was developing and creating the Instacart data science blog. So we didn't have a data science blog when I first joined, and I worked with I convinced the head of data science that that was something which was valuable to build the Instacart data science brand. And luckily she sort of supported me in the idea as well. And so then I worked with the comms team to sort of set up this blog. And that actually helped me also learn a lot about what was happening in other parts of the company outside my own immediate team, because I would work with different data scientists to try and come up with content for this data science blog. So I think my general advice in smaller companies is, I think you have more agency, even as an individual contributor, to sort of start some of these clubs or processes. Like, for example, if you're interested in, say, thinking about how LLMs can help in your career, and if you're in a small company, you could start a paper reading meeting, where you meet every week and sort of read the latest papers on LLMs or discuss different ways in which your team can use LLMs. And then I think the other thing I would say is, I think data science is still sort of relatively a new field, where I find that the role is often not that well defined. And so I think you actually have the freedom to sort of explore more than in a more sort of established role like software engineering. So for example, you could think about how to apply new techniques or techniques which are used in other industries to your own work. And I find that a lot of times leadership is pretty open for you to experiment, because that is a large part of the data science role.
Thank you. I guess there's advantages to being in a big company where you have a lot of teams, and a small company where you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Shruti, you want to add to that?
So a big part of my role has been to create opportunities as well for other people to grow our users and our product as well. So for me, it's been over the last few years as well, building those relationships within the companies and across product. My role has been more around as a central team within the organization, focused on AI and ML, and so those partnerships become really important. So you can learn more about really starting with what the user problem is, and is there an opportunity for for a potential collaboration. And I also think with AI and ML, it's not necessarily a hammer, like a solution to every problem. So it's maybe in some opportunities you want to find out, and like Apurva said, you maybe want to experiment small, and you want to assess if there's opportunity, and maybe in other cases it's more obvious, and then you want to kind of develop that stronger partnership, get your teams in sync, so you can get something into the product as well. In terms of I guess a lot of, I've also helped a lot of people make transitions into AI and ML. So this is, and I think in some of the bigger companies, there are support groups that help with that. So examples of this are, you might have sort of maybe like a learning ML learning academy maybe within your organization where you can take courses and they will also give you help you like solve problems which is pertinent to the industry. Like so when I was at Zillow, I started that in partnership with other leaders in HR. So people who were not, didn't have a background in AI and ML, they could, this would be a good starting place. They had a project, and we also helped them create a capstone project. This is all with the internal support of, the employer. So if that's an option that's there, that's great. The other things that I would say is that most companies, I would say, also have like hackathons where you can collaborate cross-functionally as well. So sometimes, maybe people may not necessarily participate in that because it may seem like, you have to take out time from your day. But I would really encourage that, especially if you're looking for focusing on a different area or more into like data science. It's a really good opportunity to build that relationship, and you never know, that could open up something more. So that's the way I've actually brought in people from other parts of the organization who are maybe more like engineering centered because they showed a lot of interest. They demonstrated that through some of these projects, and so the transition's been easier. So I think having that conversation as well is really important with your manager and the team that you might be interested in.
Thank you. Having the perspective on the organizer side is also helpful. All right. So the question is for Sonakshi, Monica, or Shaylee. In your organization, where do the data science roles fall into? And are there central teams of data scientists, or are the data people spread throughout the teams?
Yeah, so yes, they're everywhere. So we have central teams of data scientists, and I think in an academic medical center, your experience is going to look really different depending on which kind of team you sit on. So we have people who are doing data science and analytics around the hospital operations and reporting on clinical care. And then we have other teams of data scientists who are on big research teams and research labs and working on scientific questions. And then we have lone data scientists who are spread throughout the organization and embedded on scientific teams. So it's all the above in biomedical data science.
I guess as a follow-up question, your background from biostatistician to data scientist, has that been a big shift for you, or was it more, a title change?
I think working where I am, the background in biostatistics and epidemiology is really important, and in that space, people, hiring managers and HR departments are a little bit more picky about your degree, so it's much more common to have a biostatistics or bioinformatics degree than, say, a general data science degree. And as far as the transition from biostatistics to data science, I think it's a gradual change in the kind of work that I've done, and the title has followed that. Yeah.
That makes sense. Sonakshi, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. I think to Monica's point, data scientists or data science teams are everywhere within a company, be it sales, marketing, finance, or even engineering. So the way my experience has been, and what I have seen not only in Google but also Amazon, is that I have noticed two patterns. So either the data scientists or the data science team is a part of the engineering team itself, where on a day-to-day basis the data scientists are working very closely with the software engineers within the team, but taking care of developing the ML models part. So that is one thing that I have seen. The second pattern that I have noticed is there are standalone data scientist teams, and these teams have, like, it is a team filled with just data scientists, and they all have a sole focus of, let's say, improving the performance or like building new models for, let's say, Amazon has this new products that they introduce on their website. So what happens is it is very difficult to forecast for new products. So there was, at Amazon, there was a team called New Products Team, which was filled with, like, I think 10 data scientists, where every data scientist was, going and building ML models to solve for that new product problem. So the data science teams can be integrated within the day-to-day teams. It could be engineering, even sales, to forecast what the demand would look like, what actions should be taken, or there could be like standalone data science teams. That's been my experience.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Okay. For people who are starting off in their career and the earliest roles, what type of team do you suggest that they look for?
That's a good question. I would suggest, and this is again my personal preference, my preference would be that just don't work with a team of data scientists. Open yourself and like get exposure to others as well. Because what happens is sometimes when you are a data scientist, I've noticed that they kind of tend to go in their own silo a lot of times and run within their own silo. To a point where it becomes very difficult to talk to data scientists and understand what is it that they are saying. And I feel data scientist is a very unique role where you need a lot of domain knowledge. You need to really understand your customers, and you need to also speak in terms of your customers to a degree. So I feel that a data someone who's starting out as a data scientist, if you can find a team where you get to work with diverse roles like engineers, like part of someone from the sales team, someone from the marketing team, I would personally recommend doing that, so that you also not only like bring in your data science power, but also, be in touch with the domain and like understand others around you as well.
Thank you.
Can I add to this question?
Yes.
So I'd say this is one of my favorite topics because this keeps coming up, I think, in every company and industry. What I've generally seen is that when companies are starting really early days of AI and ML or in data science, they usually bring in like centralization. They have a central team and they might embed or have a bunch of different like products that they work with. But as that grows and evolves, what typically happens is that having a team manage across different domains, it becomes really hard because that context switching is much more harder. And so that's when each maybe a business might end up having its own data science team. But some companies have still formed a central organization for data science and then had teams which focus on different domains as well. And so the nice part about that is a lot of the expertise as well as career growth and everything, you're among people who are more like-minded, and so that centralization helps create things like, you want to have maybe a guild, right, for best practices and to establish more standardization within the organization. So that centralization is what helps, and I've seen that more and more companies, maybe except for maybe the super big tech companies, are probably moving towards central sort of data science organizations, which are like focused on maybe different products. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on it? All right. I have one question for everyone, and we can keep this maybe like a short question, a little bit more technical. What might be useful for people who are trying to find a new role? For those of you in leadership roles, what are some tools and methods that are most critical to your teams lately? What skills do you find yourself hoping to see on your resumes?
I know you're asking for a technical answer, but I'm just going to push back against that and say showing the ability to grow and continue to learn is absolutely the most important thing, because that technical piece is always going to be changing, and also being able to clearly communicate that and show good writing abilities on a resume is the number one thing that I would look for.
Okay, I'll let that. Anyone else? Our panelists are very excited to hear our, Shruti, do you have something?
I can add, yeah. So I think it depends on, like, for data scientists, like, depends on, like, what, again, I'm going to bring in domain that's important. So, for example, you might be working on, like, forecasting, you might have, like, certain methodologies you're looking for. I have slightly, I guess, contrary opinion to what Monica, I think, in the sense that I fully agree with her, but at the same time, I will say that certain skills and methods, having that in your resume really helps, because a lot of recruiters, as they're looking through a screening, they do the search based on keywords. Otherwise, it's really hard to go through all the resumes out there. So I will say it's important to have that, and making sure, like, based on what the job description is asking for as well, you make sure you highlight that, especially if you have that skill in some capacity, because you can only fit so many skills, right? And so there could be more. So you want to tailor your resume as well based on what the sort of job description is asking for.
All right, thank you so much. Any last words before moving on to the questions to the audience that you want to mention?
I had an initial or a follow-up thought to the first question that's been bugging me that I haven't been able to say. So transitioning into a new field, I mentioned Tableau dashboards and getting familiar with the business KPIs, but the other thing I wanted to mention is your team's Git repo. Just getting real familiar with the code is a great way to sort of dive in. What tables is the SQL query pulling from, and other things like that. And then for retail specifically, something that I really like to do is understand how data is generated. So working in the digital space, maybe I'm just sort of a weird person that likes to do this for fun, but it's really satisfying to go in the Google Developer Console and watch my clickstream events fire. I'm like, oh, pressed, clicked, product summary selected. So that's just fun. Really getting to understand how the data is generated helps you understand both its strengths and limitations. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I think for me, I would say, I think one of the most important traits for data science is curiosity. So I would say, like, definitely be curious and don't be afraid to ask questions. Because a lot of opportunities that have come my way are just because I sort of questioned the status quo.
That's a great advice. All right, I can open up the stage for questions. Yes.
I can just speak really loud. You guys keep saying curiosity and put that you continue to learn on your resume. How are you supposed to put that on a resume? So if you are a hiring manager and you want to know that I continue to learn, that I'm willing to learn new things as we go, how do I put that on a resume?
From a product management perspective, I take either different courses or certifications. That's one way, right? As a data scientist, I'm sure you can do the same. But then also showing at your work, like different projects that you might be able to pick up. And as you do, what does that look like? If you volunteer, that could be another way you can show that you're still curious and willing to learn. As well as just, even if you're just sharing on LinkedIn, right? Something that I learned, I don't know, Thought Thursdays or something, hashtag. But yeah, some other ways that you can still show.
Some kind of link to a portfolio or a website or a blog is really helpful.
I would also add, in your resume, you can write a couple of lines about yourself, and you can use that to differentiate. So.
Question. Thanks for the great points. I was also wondering, in each of the businesses that you're currently with, some of the businesses are kind of emphasizing a generalist point of view when it comes to data science and analytics. They want people who could easily interact with different backgrounds and are good with problem solving, but at the same time can be more specific when it comes to specific requirements. Whereas other businesses are looking for specifically very focused on a specific skill set. So yeah, I'm just curious about what is the emphasis? For example, if you have a new hire in the team, are you looking for generalists or are you looking for a specific skill set and kind of depth?
Hopefully when you're, when your team, or what I would say, what I've done in the past as well, if it's a fairly new team, right, we are still maybe establishing this team, then typically, you people tend to hire generalists, so, their skills are transferable. It again depends on the level as well. So if someone's more senior and they have some specialization that could be, more relevant to that field, so I'm going to use, like, for example, recommendations and ranking systems. Again, with search ranking, there are a lot of nuances with scale and everything you have to think about. So I might look for somebody who's really specialized in that area. If I'm depending on the needs of the team as well. But if someone is starting out on the team, like generally my first approach is to expose them to the breadth, right, on a particular team. And a lot of their skill sets, again, like I mentioned, there could be a few specialists on the team and they can help guide the generalists, but then you might need the generalist skills so that, you're building a team that can grow and, is more healthy for the longer run as well. So I would say it's again very much dependent on the hiring manager and what they're looking for. I think it's a good thing to clarify as well, like what do they really want in this role. Hopefully the job description will also give you a bit of taste of that. Like they typically say what's preferred versus what's basic. So I would try to get that sense from the recruiter as well, starting from the recruiter, and then the subsequent calls with as you progress through that pipeline as well.
Yeah, I can add. I think it also depends on the size of the company. So at Instacart, for example, I think generalists were preferred because they didn't have the budget to hire specialists for each and every role. Whereas in Amazon, I think they had like 9 or 10 different roles all falling within the data family. So I think that matters as well. I think another thing I would say is, especially in data science, I feel like things change so quickly that I feel like being a generalist, I think, is maybe somewhat more helpful in the long term as well, because ultimately, like for example, if you were an expert, say in natural language processing, now LLMs have come in, sort of like replaced all the earlier models. So I feel like the ability to just learn and like adapt to these new technologies is also very important.
I'll say that the pros of being a specialist are that you can get paid really well because you have some domain knowledge or you have some specialization that is in demand. You can get really paid well because of that. That's a pro. But the only con I see there is sometimes you may just become very, siloed into one thing, and that thing, if that happens to become irrelevant tomorrow, then that might put your, I won't say career at risk, but like immediate career at risk. So that is a pro. I just wanted to, I agree with what you folks said, but that is what I've seen. So as senior you get, you tend to start having a specialization, some kind of specialization in your career. But I mean, just keep your specialization a little wide, if that makes sense.
Hello everyone. So I'm a current student doing my master's in business analytics, so not from a core data science background, but I'm kind of individually transforming into the phase of transition. So I have 2 questions. One is, how would you define the overlap between analytics and data science in the current scenario? And the second one is, normally when people talk about data science, AI and ML, they talk about the tools and the technologies. How would you define product sense from a perspective of maybe what the organization needs and wants in an interview or something like that?
What was the first question again? Oh, I see. I can take this part of the question. So I used to be a data analyst and then I transitioned into a data scientist. So I've seen sort of both ends of the spectrum. I think analytics, analytics itself can be also a very big space. At Nordstrom specifically, within analytics, it used to be that some people specialize more on data visualization, actual like insights, ad hoc analytics, really answering those business questions, making that presentation to stakeholders about the answer. But then there was a bucket of analysts that really were focused on pipelines, and that sort of grew into an analytics engineering functionality, which seems to be working really well. And I can't remember who said it, but just that opportunity of new things can grow. So I love that. I think for data science versus analytics, data science to me is a little bit more about actually developing like algorithms like in a system. But I think, data science can also be very experimentation heavy, so that line is blurred. But if I'm picturing a Venn diagram, I do see that data science can require some more software engineering type of skill set, whereas analytics, you still require that skill set, but maybe it's a little bit less on super hardcore software engineering. So that's one differentiation. I do think that data scientists can also fall into the trap. I think that you were mentioning about falling into a silo. So I actually really like having that background of coming from analytics to data scientists because I am really focused on the business and have that context. I've seen some folks that have come from academia struggle a little bit with that transition because the pace is so different. Adjusting from like research to industry is challenging. So I think the analytics to data science career path is a really good one, and I'm not biased at all saying that.
Hi. Just wanted to ask a follow-up question. Previously, you were mentioning about the blurred lines between data analytics and data science in the beginning of the this whole field. Do you want to talk about that in the context of analytics and science relationship?
Yeah, I think Rebecca, covered some of this, but I think there was a point in the industry where I almost feel like data analysts, at least I know that some of the companies that I was part of did that, they almost rebranded that into data science because I felt like it was expanded it into a lot more and they couldn't really have functions. It was just analysts, but they didn't get into some of the data science aspects. So I think that's, so a lot of companies that I know just have like data science and then they have the ML roles, which could be maybe machine learning scientist, and the engineering and data engineering roles. So that's another thing to consider as well, like which companies are asking for data analysts and where they want you to be a little more flexible and think of both those aspects, data analyst and data science. So I guess having those data science skill sets is going to be that value add for you.
Thank you for sharing. We have one more question over there. Yes.
Hi, thank you for all the insight you shared. I have a question for you. Can you speak of a time where you experienced imposter syndrome and what you did to overcome it?
I'm sure we all have.
Right now.
Who wants to take on that? To start off, I can say that we were just talking about, being on a panel, being a moderator. I always think that, I shouldn't be here, but I'm like, what I'm talking about, my experience or my research, what I'm doing, I know the best. It might not be factually true, but, and thinking about that, and, when I'm presenting data or presenting my work, I'm open to other people's questions, but at the same time, I probably know the best, so that helps me the most. Anyone want to add to that?
I can go. Having bachelor's in biology and not being in tech, I feel that every day, right? As a product manager in AI/ML, even more specifically, I still feel that because then I am working with data scientists who know the models, who are building the models, but it's all about, and the way I overcome it is just ask questions and stay curious. And just keep learning more. The more you learn, the better questions hopefully you'll ask, and you'll feel less of imposter syndrome, but also just try to shake it off, right? Taylor Swift said it really well. Yeah, and if that's still getting you down, go listen to one of good power songs and come back and start from the zero again.
To build onto that, something that we do in our and our team is to explicitly encourage learning and asking questions over knowing. And I think that creates an environment where hopefully people feel less imposter syndrome.
I will share one thing. So at first, when I joined Amazon, I had like terrible imposter syndrome, and I was like struggling and suffering and everything. But now, when I look back, and if I was to go and talk to that young Sonakshi who was starting out in Amazon, I would tell her that no one knows as much as you think they know. Okay, no one knows anything. And now remember another rule of thumb, like whenever someone asks you something like, and you're like, oh my god, at that point just tell them, that's a great question, I don't know, I'll research, I'll come back and I'll talk to you. So I felt that we put this unnecessary pressure on ourselves to know everything every time and be the smartest person in the room. Sometimes I think it's okay. And trust me, no one knows as much as you think they know. Everyone is just playing along, being confident, and I think it is time you also start doing that. Just tell yourself, I know as much as it is needed, and I'm good, and I'll get there eventually. So like, don't worry. I think that's what I do, and it's helped me so far. And another thing is get a mentor. If you feel that you're really struggling, back at Amazon days, I found a mentor who had been through the same transition as me. She did understand me, my struggles and everything, and she gave me some really good insights and advice on how I can improve. So, I mean, get a mentor if that helps.
Something that I'd like to add as well is, especially folks who are, been at companies or in leadership roles, I think one of the good things is to create that space for others as well. So I think being part of that culture is also really important. This could be maybe, giving people the floor to speak, or acknowledging sometimes when, people may not know everything. So creating really an open forum. And so that's kind of, you might be initially, what I've done with my teams is going in and asking the tough questions and, making yourself vulnerable in those situations. And that kind of helps create that atmosphere, and more people will, feel more comfortable and, acknowledge that, yeah, everyone is not really perfect, and it's okay to, we all have our differences, but we bring that together, and as a team we make things happen. So I think that's really important. And I think the other thing that I'll add is, on a personal level as well, I feel like it's a lot that you're sort of maybe having a judgment about yourself, and so I think part of it is also letting that go. And what I found really useful is doing a lot of yoga and meditation as well, where you're focusing on your sort of inner self and journey as much as on external things. And so as far as I think you have that, you have a better control of your emotions and how you perceive yourself, I think that goes a long way as well with imposter syndrome.
Oh, I just wanted to build on that really specifically with what you're talking about that self-judgment. I feel like for me, like big shout out to cognitive behavioral therapy and neuroplasticity, because I recognize these thoughts in my brain and then I reject them. So like this mindset of like, just because you're having a thought, your brain just spits out like a bunch of thoughts all the time. That doesn't mean that that's making a statement about you. So I love that you said that. I wanted to call that.
So, I can share a specific anecdote. So, my second role at Amazon, I worked on a team with PhD economists, and I was the only person without a PhD. So I was intimidated at first, but then I realized that that was actually an advantage for me, because these people had spent like more than 5 years of their life focusing on these very specific research methods focused on causal inference. And I was somebody who didn't have that much knowledge about that at all. But then I was able to bring in an outsider's perspective and actually make some valuable contributions, which to somebody who was used to a very set way of doing things was actually something novel and useful. So I would say, I think every one of us has some strengths, and basically in every situation, you should try and identify your unique strengths and sort of play to those strengths.
All right, I think we are out of time. There are no last words. We're all good? All right, thank you so much. If you have any specific questions, feel free to come up to the stage and ask us as well. Thank you.